SK fell kind of flat, but it was Dynasty that were the first team to run the Captain Grace, and it worked out amazingly for them.
It certainly did, and that's been a common theme, that Captain Grace working amazingly for teams. Grumpjaw and Baron going to be the first bans, and Lyra the first lock-in. So relatively standard draft so far.
Yeah, that's what they did actually yesterday on A side. They actually first picked Lyra and then picked up Idris later if it was open for Dynasty. So here, if they pick Arden or Grace, Lyra is actually decent and works well into both those heroes. So SK is going to go ahead with the Grace. I think here they may potentially ban Koshka. Actually, they're going to ban Blackfeather, which is interesting because they actually can play a Blackfeather pretty well. So Dynasty here will most likely ban either Idris to not give it to at Grace, because that combo is really strong.
I just hope that it is going to be a Captain Grace this time. I hope SK learned their lesson from yesterday, but you never know. This is a team that likes to really try and push the envelope, try and shake things up a bit.
I mean, it could well be something that's worked a lot in scrims, and we haven't seen it work particularly well here on the stream, but I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, right? I'm more than willing to see something really come into its own and blow the minds of everyone. We'll have to wait and see, though. Obviously, a lot of other power picks still on the table. Things like the Batiste has been a terror in the jungle. I'll be curious to see if that's going to be a focus for the ban, or whether they do want to focus on
Yeah, surprisingly, EU has not played a lot of Batiste, even though in NA it's been banned or picked usually a little more often. So I think here, Vox, Idris are probably the two big ones, or even Samuel potentially. They want to deny Tyrus that Samuel. So they're going to ban Koshka, which is very interesting because SK doesn't really play Koshka that well, but I can see why, because Grace and Koshka are actually an extremely strong duo together.
And it could be that Dynasty knows more than we do. Maybe Tyrus has been practicing that Koshka just to use that with the synergy of Grace. There's a lot of things like that that do happen behind the scenes. But with the Koshka ban, Bacon, what are you expecting for these final 4 picks?
I would love to see Idris come out for the side of SK. And just Idris Grace is such a strong duo, very similar to Idris Koshka. In just you let the Idris jump in, do his damage. When he would normally get blown up, you just throw a holy shield on him, heal him up, and he's able to just stick in this fight that much longer and get that much more damage out.
Yeah, but I think Vox would be a better pick for SK because honestly, Vox is good into Grace because he's mobile, he can jump around her. So they're actually going to take Batiste, actually. So now Vox will be open. Vox will probably be taken by Dynasty here, and potentially Samuel is a good pick because of the constant slows that he can provide against a Grace diving in. So instead, they're going to actually take Idris right here and potentially Samuel to round out the pick.
It just does work quite well into Grace as well, has the ability to jump out of her stuns, but when you combo with the Batiste, this is a duo and a composition that we are very familiar with on the desk. We've been actually running this quite a bit, but it is going to be Samuel and then a Kestrel to round it out. And
definitely, it's very different, our experience with the composition, to what the pros are actually going to be able to do with this. So now, looking at these compositions, now that we're kind of locked into this is looking like one of those weapon power Kestrels going into the lane once again. That's been creeping on into the meta. How are we feeling about the 2 drafts here? What are our thoughts on the final compositions that have come out?
Yeah, I think both drafts are pretty even. It's going to come down to execution. However, I do like Dynasty's draft a little better because Lyra can portal in and engage onto the Kestrel. And I think that with how SK's draft work is they need Grace to go in and the Kestrel and Batiste to basically lock someone down. And Idris is very mobile. They need to basically get onto Samuel.
So for Dynasty then, what are the win conditions going to be in this game?
Well, for Dynasty, they have to just, like Sweet just said, just engage onto that Kestrel, try and blow up the Kestrel, try and blow up the Batiste. They're both very squishy, so they will have the opportunity to do so, but I actually prefer the SK draft because there is so much lockdown potential. You know, yeah, there's a lot of mobility from Idris, but if an Ordained goes onto him and he tries to jump out of it, he's getting stunned. You then are going to be just blown up by Grace and Kestrel in an instant. I love this combination that SK have picked up.
So quite a lot then down to how well this team can use their reflex blocks and how they can actually avoid the correct CC in these fights, because the second that you do get locked down, you're not going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of combo potential with if they initiate first, I think SK is going to win the fight because with their Ordain and with Kestrel's burst, they can definitely trap Idris or Samuel in that Ordain and do a lot of work there.
All right, well, with that in mind, it's just about time to get on into our first game of today. Before we do, make sure to get involved on Twitter. Use that hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know who you're going to be supporting today and across the rest of the games today as well. But with that, let's hand over to game number 1.
Thank you very much, Munch. And this is an incredibly exciting series because not only do we have Dynasty Gaming going up against SK Gaming to try and secure a finalist position this week here, AJ, but both these compositions are incredibly strong.
Yeah, they really are. There's a lot of power picks that manage to get through. Sure, we don't see Baron and Grumpjaw, but, can't have everything. I think, I'm especially curious to see how this Captain Grace does. We've seen it once before. It was actually ran by Dynasty, and that did very well. It has not done quite as well from the jungle. So Mowgli should, at the very least, know how to play against this. Obviously, Captain Grace does operate a little differently, has very different power spikes. Lyra, well understood at this point, having been out for a while. Very good at pressuring the lane, and I think probably with the Idris here, that's something they might consider doing. Rikomeza should be able to deal with a lot of the pressure that comes out of Grace Baptiste, though, just by virtue of the fact that he can sort of keep his distance, get some good sustain up with Corrupted Genius.
And I think you could kind of argue that perhaps there was a bit of an outdrop, but we'll talk about it in a second as Rikomez is all by himself and he's taking so much harass. Here comes Mowgli, here comes PT Lamb, the heal is there, but it's not enough. First Blood's going to go over to Raph, and now Dynasty are in a terrible position because this is just going to be PT Lamb losing his life, the snowball continuing, and SK going to gain 2 for themselves.
We've seen a few times, actually, over the course of yesterday and now today, it begins the contest of the Elder Treant when it really is not a good idea. I understand that Rikomeza has a great deal of range, and with the Drifting Dark and Malice and Verdict, he has good damage too. It makes sense that he wants to contest there. Problem is that Grace has a slow attached to her heroic perk, and she applies that heroic perk every time she uses her A, her Benediction. It's also one of the longest range dashes in the game. So basically, when you go up and you do that, Grace jumps on you, she slows you, that lets Tyrus close the gap, and he's level 2, he's got Ordain. You're not going to get away from that, right? Like, you have to think about what tools are available to your opponents. There's nothing Rikomeza can do against that combo.
Especially when Mowgli was in the lane and was very content in being in the lane. There was just absolutely nothing. Now look at SK's positioning. They have rotated instantly to the backs and they're going to start contesting them. We do see the entirety of Dynasty porting back to base so that they might be able to help out, but Rikomeza is in trouble and that's going to be Ordain stunning him up. Rikomeza going very low. They're looking to try and find the kill as Peachy Lamb will jump onto Tyra's, but Dynasty need to pick a target and they need to be as one here or else they're just not going to get anything. A healing camp goes the way of SK, and a second one will go their way as well, as Tyra's going to put the pressure onto Rikomeza, and he's just trying to dance on the side of this Ordained. Tyra's going low. They have healing, but look at where PT Lamb is. He's given up. This is just 2 versus 3. Mowgli trying to escape, but the bad mojo will hit him in the butt, and that's going to be a 3rd kill to SK.
Oh man, Baptiste, only you can do 240 burst damage at level 3. With basically no items. That was ridiculous. He had 2 crystal bits, and he was hitting 241 with that bad mojo. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit again. Similar kind of situation where contesting is probably not wise. It was a little bit easier to try and make a case there, but only if PT Lamb stays, and he definitely did not. He went all the way to take back camps. I can understand why you would make that decision. But it needs to be a team decision. Like, you need to back up with your other 2 guys and just kind of, like, not fully commit. Try and just dissuade your opponents from going back and stopping PT Lamb from taking the backs. Don't commit to fighting them. Do not have the members to make it happen. Also,
PT Lamb, ooh, bit of poke. Does go down to half HP.
Yeah, he's going to be able to get out of there. So also the other thing to consider when you're fighting against a Grace is that nowhere is safe. Like, nowhere is safe. That dash is way too long range for you to stand in that bush across the wall and feel safe. Like, she will be able to follow up. The knockup was great. I honestly haven't seen that many big knockups from Graces yet in the Vainglory 8, but that was probably the first one that was super impactful. It was really, really effective. I feel like Dynasty need to and it might be a bit too late to commit to whatever plan they originally had, but they should have committed to this plan to begin with. They should have just said, all right, Rickameza, you're going to have to play scared a little bit, right? Like, we're going to focus on using Lyra the way she's most effective in this comp, which is, you know, sticking with PT Lam in the lane, being kind of obnoxious to Kvalifar, keeping PT Lam safe. Because, yeah, PT Lam, especially before Divergent Paths comes online, is going to be in a bit of a dicey position up there, so...
Yeah, Ordained
in
trouble once
again.
more. This is, I would actually argue the opposite, but this is just from personal experience that I wanted to kind of talk about the fact that perhaps there was an outdraft from SK with the Batiste into Samuel. It seems to be a fairly consistent counter to the likes of Sky and Samuel because you can out-damage them at range, and if a fight does break out, especially when you have a Grace and a Batiste on the same side, then the ability to turn that fight around instantly with the usage of Grace's knock-up and Fearsome Shade is there for SK. It allows Kvalifar easy positioning because he's the one who's going to be dived upon by the Idris. And so from that point of view, you're likely going to have a lot of pressure put onto your Samuel just through the fact that Tyra's already counters the Samuel on a Batiste, and with a Grace it means, like you've said, nowhere is safe for Rickameza to go. So potentially bad moves by Mowgli, not necessarily recognizing who's going to be the most vulnerable hero on his composition, and already this gold deficit that's gone, it's not apparent because PT Lam is trying to keep up in farm, and he's actually done a fantastic job of out farming Kvalifar by 30. But when you look at the difference in jungle to jungle, it's a huge experience deficit, 2 whole levels, almost 20 CS there, and when it's in jungle and it's 2 levels, that's huge.
I absolutely agree, and it's not that I don't disagree that Mowgli should probably be helping Rickameza. I just don't think that's their plan. Like, based on how they played in the early game, it seemed like Mowgli's plan was to play this sort of traditional Lyra lane harassment style, which, you know, that may not be correct, but it doesn't really matter in this game. In a vacuum, like, the strategy Dynasty has committed to or had committed to was very much lane centric.
Yep.
And, you know, once you start committing to a plan, if you suddenly back out of that and it's too late, you're just going to end up being at a deficit everywhere on the map, right?
Yeah.
Like, PT Lam could probably be further ahead if he had just gone to lane immediately. Like, never tried to fight at all in the jungle and never tried to help there. So, yeah, I think that's one thing to consider for sure. I do think that this is a bit of a dicey draft. Like, the Batiste is extremely good into the Samuel, right? You talked about that. It's not just good, though, because you, like, outrange with damage, etc., etc. The big thing is that how can you use Drift and Guard? Like, one of Samuel's most critical abilities is just shut down by Ordained, and also the Batiste synergizes beautifully well with the Grace, right? Like, because if you're stuck inside of an Ordained, that is about the sort of surface area of the circle, right? Of the knock-up from Grace. So there's no real way to avoid CC. You either take a stun and then a knock-up, or you just take a knock-up, and you've got to stand your ground and fight, which, you know, Samuel is really bad at doing. This is comprehensively, you know, a composition that does very well into a Samuel. Now, the Idris might be the sort of saving grace here. I do see windows for him to be effective, but I don't think the damage is there on the side of Dynasty to deal with Grace's crazy protection and sustain. Lyra, I think, is not going to be as effective because, you know, she has very sustained sustain, right? Like, it's over the course of a fight, she can heal very effectively, whereas Grace will stop that burst and counteract that. That's what's going to be very effective against someone like an Idris, who does pretty high sustained damage. Samuel, who does, you know, pretty high sustained damage. If you burst heal, you know, it really shuts that down. Look at the burst on the side of SK, though. You know,
Yeah.
Speaking of the alternative, Mowgli will not have time to get multiple rotations of his heal off, most likely. And as a result, I don't think the Lyra is going to be as effective as she would like to be either. Not to mention, you know, Bulwark. What does Bulwark do in this? It just deals with Raph's dash. And he can wait for that to wear off whilst there's an Ordained on the target and just walk up. So, compositionally, it's going to be a struggle for Dynasty. They're playing from a deficit at the beginning of this game.
They are, and I would actually like to see Mowgli stack health at this point, try and get those sigils healing as much as possible. It will deal with the fact that Raph will have a huge heal on his ultimate, the Divine Intervention. If Peter Lam was to dive on top of Kvalifar, likely the person he would look for and try and blow up this Kestrel. If that's to fail, the Divine Intervention comes out, Kvalifar's healed almost back to full, and that's where you kind of need to contest the sustained heal that the team from SK can put out, or perhaps the burst heal is what I'm looking for. You just see a Crucible come out, and that's going to be very important in dealing with some of these engage tools that are there, specifically that fearsome shade. But look at Mowgli, he has just walked straight into Kvalifar, and Kvalifar is just going to chunk him right on down. Sigil will pop to give him movement speed, but now not only does Mowgli have to keep his 2 carry and jungle alive, but he has to heal himself, and this turret is taking a beating. It's an engage from SK. Raph in trouble. Fearsome Shade goes out, does push Mowgli back. PT Lam will take a one-shot. It is not going to be a turret falling, and there's the heals coming out. They're just not quite enough to heal everyone up, but Oblivion will fly, and Crucibled up. Mowgli is just right out of position. He goes in, and he gets ordained, and it's going to be SK finishing this job off. The turret will fall, and the gold lead progresses to more, and it's Rikomeza being stunned, but he will be let free. SK 4-0.
This is a rough spot to be in. I mean, there's really no easy way of engaging with the Lyra, and you know, as I said, it doesn't really shut down the enemy's engage either. So kind of a rough pick into this composition. Mowgli was trying to make the best out of a bad situation. It may have worked if someone had missed their reflex block or something on the Oblivion, but as it stands, very hard to find openings for Dynasty, and honestly, SK is playing their composition really well. You know, they're focusing on poke, and if a fight breaks out, well, Grace just shuts it down, lets them reposition, lets them get into the right spot to deal the damage. Also, PT Lam, I was about to say prior to that fight, like, he's just got Divergence Pass. That's really important so that he can blink out of, for example, the perk of Wrath, make sure that he can stay in the right bits of the fight and not get slowed up. But he's not there yet. He needs one more item to really threaten anyone on the side of SK Gaming. You know, there's too much sustain, etc. It's good that he got the Div. Oh, Tyrus.
Yeah, Tyrus is caught out a little bit. Rikomeza trying to find the kill, and it will be a trade, jungler for jungler here.
That's a good trade.
Can PT Lam find any more? Oh, great dodge of that stun. The active camo, PT Lam dodges it perfectly. It doesn't look like they want to continue fighting. I'm not sure if that's the correct move, really, from Dynasty. Cooldowns on Idris can be long. I think that could have been an opportunity to try and, you know,
that
push
definitely was an
further.
opportunity. Sure, your cooldowns are long, but mostly your basic attack against weapon Idris, and they had Arcane Passage to get right on top of Kvalifar. They're going
There you
now.
go. They're going to go for it now, and they might just find
There
Kvalifar
it is.
instantly. Yep, that was overstay from SK, really. Your Dynasty recognized that the window was there.
That was a nice pick by Dynasty. I think maybe they could have made it earlier and found 2, or at the very least forced Wrath lower so he can defend turret. But as it stands, this is a window, right? Like, they can get some push onto the turret. It's pretty hard for Tyrus by himself to shove this wave, because the splash radius on bad mojo is actually quite small. I like the fear, though.
That could have been crucibled. Like, it maybe Mowgli's thinking, oh, I don't need to block it because we get the turret anyway, but the minion wave did get eaten up by a single bad mojo. I just kind of feel like at this point, what are you holding onto the Crucible for? Like, are you going to be looking for a fight in the next minute? Probably not. If you look at the fact that PT Lam and Rikomeza have gone to the backs here to get gold and experience, then it says to me Dynasty would have wasted anything.
Yeah, I mean, at this, like, right when I'm saying this, they probably would have had, like, what, 10 seconds left on Crucible? So it would have only really made sense if they were going to contest the shop/gold time, which it doesn't look like they were even considering, which I think is smart, because they know that SK would have gotten back to that area, so yeah, I agree. Like, why not? Why not use it and maybe try and convert that turret into a pick as well? You know, Tyrus and Raph were there, and they'd been poked a decent amount. We're starting to get towards the mid-game, though, Dowsey, and this is when things can really change in surprising ways sometimes. PT Lam has hit a 3rd item. I like that he went for the tornado trigger, just trying to, you know, chunk down people before it's too late.
Mowgli has gone forward, but he's losing a lot of his health bar. Look at PT Lam getting feared up. He's struggling to escape, and the Ordained will take him on out. That's just going to be SK charging forward. Raph trying to set up, but as that B ability again from the Grace. If teams don't want to fight you, then it's so hard to connect it.
Yeah, there was a lot of disengaged crowd control. That's one of the
Oh,
stunts of
no.
Mowgli.
Mowgli is trying to heal himself up. That's going to be him going down, it seems. No, he manages to just use the minion wave perfectly, and the one-shot will be eaten by Rikomeza to keep him healthy. Incredible. Fountain's going to be popped for Crystal Sentry here. That's going to be Crystal Sentry going down, but
I like how Rikomeza
SK felt like they had to. Yeah.
So, okay, I mean, let's unpack that a little bit, because there's a few interesting things that happened. First things first, you gotta realize how insane the disengage is from SK Gaming. This is one of the reasons why Lyra is, as we mentioned before, kind of struggling. When you jump on top of the SK comp, what happens? Well, active camo might be there. Grace's B ability is an option, and it's very easy to land in that situation. There's an Ordained and a Fear. Those are, like, you can only Crucible 2 of those. Like, you know, like, they might stack some of those, they realistically probably will. But there's only so much you can deal with. PT Lamb caught out again.
He is. PT Lamb will just get blown up. You know, the issue with Idris, right, is that his blink seems a little bit inconsistent sometimes. If you are trapped in an Arden Gauntlet, per se, AJ, you can use your Shroud Step to jump over the walls of that and escape it. But when you're caught in an Ordained, you can't use your Shroud Step to jump over that. And I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure how that works. I haven't quite worked it out yet. I've been trying to do some research into it, but it does mean that PT Lamb cannot escape. This Kraken going low. Ooh, Massive Verdicts do a lot of damage, but Kavalifa just kept everyone at bay there, and now SK's going to get the heal and the Kraken as well.
Yeah, that is a bit of an issue with your dash there on PT Lamb. Honestly, in the situation he was in, the answer is just to immediately ult and wait for your team and try and maybe set something up off the back. You can't try and escape other ways, because it's just not going to happen. Like, there's too much crowd control on the side of SK Gaming. Right now, though, Kraken pushing in here. There's a window for Dynasty. You know, they managed to make some things happen. It's kind of fallen by the wayside here. They got to be very careful. A fight would be a good opportunity here as PT Lamb flanks.
Yeah, they're going straight on in. PT Lamb's onto Tyrus. Tyrus taking a lot of damage. There's the Ordained Walls, but that's going to be PT Lamb just finishing him off over the wall. Gets the kill. Now they're going for Kavalifa. He just about escapes with a Crucible coming out, but he's not likely to find it, and that's going to be PT Lamb escaping away before the knockout comes through. Here's that opportunity that Dynasty so desperately needed. They're going to take down this Kraken before they lose their choke point turret and really cut the losses that what that could have become.
So that was the example of a fight going well for Dynasty that, you know, you can kind of theory beforehand. You have to get on top of Tyrus, right? He's the only member you can really easily stick on top of. And you have to kill him before that ult comes down, which barely, I mean, very barely PT Lamb was able to do. It's all about stutter stepping, getting the maximum amount of DPS down. You know, Tyrus is going to struggle in a situation like that, especially once you have individual reflex blocks as well as the Crucible, so you can deal with his fear for the disengage and get through something else like an active camo stun or Ordain. Dynasty did buy themselves back into this game a little bit off the back of that fight. They're only 1,000 gold behind. PT Lamb, if he can, you know, do that kind of damage, if he can find that window and flank and be able to get onto a carry at the onset of a fight, it is winnable for Dynasty, right? Like, the problem is that if they engage straight up, if Mowgli just ports in and everyone is on top of each other, then you're guaranteed going to get hit by too much crowd control to do anything.
And the ability for PT Lamb to blow up someone like Tyrus is being enabled by the fact that his third item here is a Tornado Trigger. You know, there's so many different options for Idris. Wow, that is a weapon-powered Glimmer Shot right there.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities for potential builds for Idris, and he's decided to go this Tornado Trigger. What it gives is crit and attack speed, which means he can sustain the damage. A fight's got to break out here as Mowgli dives in the middle of the fight. Wrath goes through the walls the other way, and Mowgli just gets destroyed before he even uses his fountain. This is disastrous for Dynasty, as PT Lamb cannot escape that Ordain. 2 down, 1 to go. Rikomeza going to be tagged by the one-shot. 800 HP on a weapon power Kestrel. It just seems ridiculous. Dynasty have lost their front line, and now Rikomeza is going to be struggling to hold the base.
So that was kind of a bold arcane passage for a couple of reasons. The first and most obvious after that fight being that, Rikomeza, you should be able to get it. The first and most obvious being that you can't actually follow Mowgli there. right? Like, you just can't. If you try and go through the portal, you're right on top of the CC, so you have to wait, okay? So you wait, and then when you go in, it's too late, because your captain's already dead, and then you're in a bad spot, and you have nowhere to run, no movement available to you, so you end up going back through the portal, back away from the fight, pretty much regardless of if you want to. I think that was a very, very poor engage from Dynasty. They had an opportunity to come back into this game, but after losing a couple of turrets there and struggling so much in that fight, I'm not so sure it's going to happen. It really does rely on someone misplaying or being out of position, which SK have only shown themselves to do once or twice this game. Kraken is able to be leveraged here, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be an engage from Raph. Look at PT Lamb already low. Mowgli, he is in the middle of the fight. This time he's surviving. That's going to be a crucible, but he goes down and the fountain was not quick enough to save his life. He was caught in the fear from that fearsome shade. Havalafa goes low. Fountain will bring him back up to full HP. There is an opportunity, I think, for Dynasty to try and contest this. I don't know if they'll go for it. It is very risky, but with an Idris and a Samuel, you certainly have the damage to do it. You just have to set up perfectly and really find your shots.
Well, the thing is, Divine Intervention was on cooldown if they chased immediately after that, and they probably could have picked someone, or tried to contest Kraken. But because of the overdrive on Benediction, Raph is getting his cooldowns up really quick, and he used his ultimate around where that scout trap is by the camp by sentry, walked over to Kraken, and by the end of Kraken, his ultimate was back up. That's ridiculous. Like, that was way too fast. You needed to capitalize on that window to do anything there. Now, with Kraken pushing in and only 2 turrets left, Dynasty's in a really rough spot. They need to make a pretty snappy decision for an engagement here, and they really need to be cohesive as a unit, get the good Crucible down onto probably the Fear, and try and pick one of the carries fast. It's the only option.
Okay, let's see if Dynasty can find a fight before they lose their base here. There they go, straight on to Kavalafa. He's going very low. Oh, great Shimmer Strike, and that's going to be the kill going over to PD Lamb. Mowgli, Fountain saves his life, and Tyrus is going to go down next, it seems, as everyone's on top of him. The Ordain won't do anything. They've done it, Dynasty. They pull the trigger, and this time Mowgli survives to tell the tale. Another Kraken defended.
This is exactly what we were talking about, right? Like, they need to just go in and pop a carry. They did that on Kavalathar. They also had a really good Crucible there, stopped the Fear from being effective. PT Lamb was playing slightly split from the rest of his team. He went around a bit like the flank. He went through the portal and then blinked immediately. That allows him to actually be in position to not get hit by, for example, the Grace B too easily, because, you know, obviously Kavalathar has to move, and that means that PT Lamb can actually leave that area. It was a good fight from Dynasty, but they still lost a turret, right? So they're 1 turret left. It's about half health. That is not a great spot to be in. They need to play flawlessly from this point on if they want to be able to win this one. But again, as I've said a few times, it's possible. It's a very thin line, right? Like, they've really got to be careful in these fights.
Yeah, and PT Lamb needs to be making sure that his reflex block is used pretty much exclusively for escaping Ordains, so he can escape the prison that is placed down. As the way Ordained works, as I recheck my facts, is it's all about the area rather than the walls of the Ordained. And it's when you leave the area, that's when you get stunned. So that's why Idris can't blink out of it. Another fight going to break out, and SK diving straight on in. It's going to be PT Lamb jumping away, does get stunned, and it's going to be the Fear blocked up. Can they turn this fight around? They need to go aggressive here. They can't keep running away, because Tyrus will just pop them right down. Mowgli, the main target. PT Lamb's going to dive forward, looking for Kavalafa. There is that Shimmer Strike, but he gets blown up. And now it's all on Rikameza and Mowgli to keep this game alive for Dynasty. Raph charging forward. Rikameza putting the work down. They get the speed. They take the damage, though. And it seems like SK will give up flight. The Kraken, though, should be ready for the taking.
That was a winnable fight, Dalsy. I'm going insane. They just needed to commit to it a little bit earlier. PT Lamb was in actually a really good position to just turn and fight. Mowgli could have backed him up with a heal, and Rikameza could actually have moved north and gone through the portal to have a great side, like, flank position. You would not have been able to AoE crowd control them past the beginning of that one. Here comes another fight, though.
Yeah, they're looking to contest, but when Rikameza just gets blown up that quickly, that is not going to be anything here for the side of Dynasty. And actually, I'm surprised that SK aren't just looking to finish the game straight off that. I don't think they need the Kraken. 44 seconds, they could have charged into the base. They would have arrived just as PT Lamb spawned in a 2v3. I just don't think that they would have defended. But with the Kraken taken, it's going to be a slightly less risky, slightly more stable play from SK. But I wonder if Rikimeza will spawn in time to try and save the day once more.
For all intents and purposes, the game has been won by SK here. It would really require a miracle for Dynasty to defend. I don't see how they make that happen, but let's go. Let's make the fight.
Yeah. Let's go. They need to dive forward. They need to go for the fight now. They need to dodge Raph as he goes in for the engage. It's all these things and more, but the turret has already gone down. SK are going for this. Here's Rikimeza, and they're looking to try and get onto Kavalifar. No, they're going for Tyras. Kavalifar's all the way at the back. Where's PT Lamb? He was getting an infusion all the way back. It was the fearsome shade, I think, that pushed him there, and that is SK just waltzing right in and stealing away the Vein Crystal. Game 1 goes.